Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you here to this wonderful venue. I know it's nicer outside, but what I'll be speaking about today is about the outside, so you're halfway there. I'd like to thank the Darby Love and all the people at the 91 North Library for affording me the opportunity of being able to speak to you today. My name is, for those of you who don't know, Lawrence Winkler, and I'm currently between jobs. Although today has reassured me a little bit that there may be a little hope to my audacity coming. If you have cell phones, I would appreciate you, Robin, switching them to stun. Unless you want to have a live Twitter feed, you know, I'm okay with that. You can do that. Today, I'm going to read excerpts from a book that I wrote 7 years ago. And so your first question is, well, what took you so long? And the answer is very simple. Being XY kind of genotype, I don't take directions very easily. And so I have a hardware operating system that's rather delusional. And I thought all I had to do was put an ebook up on Amazon. And within 2 weeks, you know, the Nobel Committee would be wending its way through, you know, to my inbox, and it didn't happen. So I waited another year, wrote another book. It still didn't happen. And I had my heart set on this because there are 5 individuals who have refused the Nobel Prize in Literature. 3 of them are French, go figure. But I wanted to be the 6th. And I found out that that's the reason why the Pulitzer people do not announce the winners before they announce the winners. So 6 years went by, 6 books went by, and I decided that Einstein was right, and you know, doing things repeatedly is kind of a stupid thing to do. And so luckily, my lovely assistant, who doesn't want to be pointed to, Robin, for my 60th birthday had a surprise for me, had several actually. And one of them was that she had printed some copies of Westwood Chronicles, and at the party we gave them out to some friends. And unbeknownst to me, she dropped a copy down to Nault, which is a 9-ware area land trust downtown, where it sat on a desk for a year. But unbeknownst to me again, there was a biologist down there who I guess was not very busy, and he read the book over and over again and emailed me one day. And he said that he wanted to buy a print book. And I wrote him back and I said, well, I don't have one. And he wrote me back and he said, well, what would it take to get one? And I wrote him back and I said, more than you've got. But I said, if you could get some individuals together, I would print a run, and that would be it. So he emailed me back and said he wanted 50, and thus the legend was born. And I thought, gee, you know, I wonder if I did an author reading whether I could boost those numbers just ever so slightly. So the next question is, well, what's the book about? And this is probably one of the reasons why the Nobel Committee people haven't got in touch with me, because it's a little hard to characterize. I had a perspective publisher, heavy on the perspective, who asked me the same question once, and I said, well, it's narrative nonfiction, natural history, a bit of natural philosophy, and it's about my backyard. And I had a reviewer that said that it was a lyrical chronicle of the science and poetry of nature. And he said, yeah, but what's it really all about? He said, is it like Walden or Pilgrim at Tinker Creek? And I said, no, it's like Westwood Lake Chronicles. And so he asked me what he should do about it, and I said, well, why don't you read the book and get back to me? And he did. And he told me that, to my distress, that the book was far too gentle. And I told him that he obviously didn't know me very well. So if I had 3 sentences to describe the book, I would describe it thus. Everything has a story. We protect what we love, and we write what we know. And so that leads me to how I came to write the book. I didn't actually start out to write a book. I didn't actually intend to become a writer. I didn't intend a lot of things, but that's the way it goes. And there are 3 inherent contradictions, 3 things I did backwards to get this book out. The first was that the inspiration actually came from exhaustion. which doesn't sound like the right direction. But when I was working in my backyard and vineyard or in the garden, and I got tired, I sort of flopped into an Adirondack chair and looked around. And most of the time I didn't see anything because I was blurry-eyed, but very occasionally and more frequently I started to see things that I'd only looked at before. I started to notice some stuff in my backyard: animals, plants, weather conditions, people who shouldn't be there. Anyway, I started wondering a little bit about why something was named what it was named, and what function it had, and how it fit in the grand scheme of things, and how it lived and how it died. And it became a process of deliberate inquiry, and then it became a catalog. And then the catalog started to develop a narrative, and a narrative is just a meaning-making machine. So it wasn't just a chronology, there was causality, and there was centrality, and there was architecture, and there was a voice that came out of this. And the voice was a great voice. It became an anthem. It became an anthem for my lovely assistant and I, to celebrate, a bit of a celebration as to what was in the backyard. And it was a big anthem. It was a brass band anthem. It was arpeggios. It was major chords. It was majorettes. Well, not so many, but there were some. And so, as I wrote it further, I discovered that there was a second inherent contradiction. There was a second thing I got backwards. Most literary happy ending celebrations are a journey towards paradise. But as our good neighbors will vouch for me, if you're in paradise, there's only one direction from there. And everything I wrote about started to become a bit of a cautionary tale. It started to become a bit of Paradise Lost redux. The red squirrels and the Douglas squirrels started getting beaten up by the eastern gray squirrels. The running little native blackberries got pounced on by Luther Burbank's big Armenian blackberries. And the little Pacific chorus frogs, who used to open our gates every spring, got eaten up by the jug-a-rum American bullfrogs. And it happened to people too. Developers would come into the neighborhood, cut down the trees, name the streets after them. And I started thinking about this whole process, inexorable process of entropy in the second law of thermodynamics, and how it was also inevitable, and how when humans are displaced, it's a tragedy, and when flora and fauna are displaced, it's progress. So all of a sudden I had an anthem that had a few minor phrases in it. It wasn't just all big major chords and arpeggios. But that paradoxically added a layer of richness as well. So for today's reading, I'm going to tell you the book can be read on three levels. It can be read on the lyrical level, the poetic prose at the bottom. It can be read in the scientific level in the middle, the sandwich of the stuff, and is well researched, according to the Nanaimo Bulletin. And it can be read on a philosophical level, existential, transformational. But for today's purposes, because it's nice outside, and I can see by the frowns in some of your faces that I'm talking way too much instead of reading, I'm going to keep it on the lyrical level, and I'm going to read just a few extracts. And then at the end, you can ask me questions, and I may or may not answer them. That's great. Okay, so here we go. I gotta learn how to do this first. Yes. It was late afternoon when Shiva and I met them on the ridges. We were climbing, and they were lost. British couple, mid-30s, corpulent, very posh. "Excuse me, but is this the way to the top of Mount Benson?" asked the man. I said, "No." "Would you be so kind as to point us in the right direction?" I commented it was getting rather late in the day for a stroll up to over 1,000 meters, and inquired if they had a map. "Oh yes," he replied, pulling out a folded tourist brochure out of his pocket. I asked if they had a cell phone. No, but we have a GPS. I must have been staring. Great, I said. So you know exactly where you are when you die. Mount Benson's the Anchor Rock Westwood Lake backstop that stops us falling away to Tokyo. It's our Mondaily toxin cleanser, our chanterelle pantry, and our almanac. No summer garden is planted until all the snow is gone from the summit. From the Island Highway, the BC Ferry, or a puddle jumper plane from Vancouver. When Mount Benson comes into view, Robin and I know we're almost home. As harsh as my comment to the English couple was, Benson is not a salvatory. It has always been an aerial arena of clashing natural forces, economic and recreational vested interests, and occasional last refuges. Its slopes, like those of most other mountains, have been witness to and the cause of life and death, and occasional rescues. Snowmobilers have fallen through mountain lake ice, hermits have burned alive, and on October 17, 1951, the people on Queen Charlotte Airlines Flight 102 from Kitimat flew right into the mountain face at 1,600 feet when the canceled pilot mistook Nanaimo for Vancouver. 2 hikers died of hypothermia in January of 2002. They had no means to start a fire, no map or compass, no flashlight, no extra clothes or space blanket, and no extra food or water. Their cell phone ceased working for unknown reasons. The lives of those that died elsewhere are often commemorated on the mountain with bronze plaques, scattered daffodils, or scattered ashes. I'm no mountaineer, but I've climbed mountains in my life. Kilimanjaro, Toubkal, Adams Peak, dozens more whose names I can't recall. I'm still on fire from this one in our backyard, though. I have a favorite YouTube video of another young European couple sitting on a knoll